The dream started quietly. She was standing in a dimly lit bathroom, its tiles wet and glistening as though it had just rained indoors. A faint humming echoed from somewhere unseen, like a broken lullaby. Her best friend, Lena, sat inside the bathtub, her long hair floating around her face. At first, it seemed harmless. Lena was laughing, splashing water like a child. But the laugh began to distort, stretching into gasps. Her body lurched forward, hands clawing at the edge of the tub, slipping back into the water again and again. "Lena," she whispered in the dream, frozen. Water began to rise rapidly, far too high for a bathtub. The surface turned dark, thick, almost tar-like. Lena's mouth opened wide in a silent scream as invisible hands pressed her beneath the surface. The dreamer tried to move, tried to reach her friend, but her own feet were rooted to the tile, as though the floor itself had swallowed her. All she could do was watch. The last thing she saw before waking was Lena's pale hand breaking the surface of the water, then going still. She woke up choking on air, heart racing, sheets drenched in sweat. She told herself it was just a nightmare. That's all. Just a nightmare. But by noon, her phone buzzed. A message. Then another. Then a call. Her hands trembled as she answered. The voice on the other end was broken, sobbing. "Lena's dead. They found her in her bathtub this morning. She drowned." The phone slid from her hand. Her chest locked tight as the air drained from the room. And in that silence, her dream replayed itself in her mind, every single horrifying detail. It wasn't a nightmare. It was a warning. She didn't sleep for 2 nights after Lena's death. Every time she closed her eyes, she feared the dream would return. She forced herself to stay awake, coffee, energy drinks, even slapping her own face in the mirror. But exhaustion always wins. On the 3rd night, she slipped under. This time, she was in a train station. The place was nearly empty, its fluorescent lights flickering with a sickly hum. The air reeked of metal and mildew. At the far end of the platform stood her coworker, Daniel. He didn't see her. He was pacing nervously, scrolling on his phone, looking over the edge at the tracks below. She called out his name, but her voice made no sound. She tried again, screaming louder, but the world swallowed her words whole. Then she heard it, a low, guttural rumble that grew louder and louder, the sound of an oncoming train. But when the lights appeared in the tunnel, the train looked wrong. Its headlights burned too bright, its wheels shrieked like knives scraping bone. Daniel leaned too far over the edge. His foot slipped. She ran. She sprinted with every ounce of strength she had, reaching out desperately to grab him, but the space between them stretched unnaturally, like the platform itself was lengthening to stop her. The train roared closer. Daniel turned just in time for her to see his face twisted in confusion and terror before the lights engulfed him. The impact echoed like thunder. His body vanished beneath the train, and blood sprayed across the platform tiles. She collapsed to her knees, sobbing, clawing at the floor, begging to wake up. And then she did. Her chest was heaving. Her hands were shaking. She whispered, "No, no, no," over and over as she checked her phone. Morning came too quickly, and with it the news. Her phone lit up with a headline. "Local man dies in train accident. Witnesses say he slipped onto the tracks." The photo was of Daniel. Her dream wasn't random anymore. It was becoming a curse, and the pattern was undeniable. She hadn't left her apartment in days. The curtains were drawn tight. Every clock seemed to tick louder than it should. Every shadow on the walls seemed to lean toward her. The hum of silence pressed against her ears until it was unbearable. 2 people, Lena, Daniel, both dead. And both deaths had happened exactly as she had seen them. She tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe her brain was making connections where there weren't any. But deep down, a truth was slithering into her chest, curling tight around her lungs. Her dreams were killing people. She scrolled through her phone, looking at photos of everyone she knew. Her mother, her younger brother, her boss, even strangers on her social feed. Each face terrified her. What if they appeared next? What if she closed her eyes, and they died because she had seen it? She ran to the bathroom, gripping the sink, staring at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were bloodshot, ringed with dark circles. Her lips cracked from sleepless nights. "I'll just stop sleeping," she whispered, her voice trembling. "If I don't dream, no one dies." But even as she said it, she knew it was impossible. Humans have to sleep. And she was already fraying at the edges, hallucinating shadows in the corners of the room. Then, her phone buzzed. A message. It was from her brother. Just 3 words. "You okay, sis?" Her throat tightened. Tears welled in her eyes. She typed back, "Yes, just tired." But her fingers hovered over the keyboard, shaking. What if tonight, when her body finally gave out, it was him she saw in her dream? What if she woke up to another headline, another tragedy she couldn't prevent? The realization stabbed her like an ice pick. Sleep wasn't the enemy. The dreams weren't the enemy. She was. She was the killer, whether she wanted it or not. And for the first time, she wondered if it would be better for everyone if she simply never woke up again. She fought sleep like it was poison. Coffee cups littered her desk. Empty energy drink cans rolled under her bed. The buzzing of her phone alarms filled the apartment at odd hours, each one a desperate attempt to keep her awake. But the body always wins. On the 3rd night without rest, her head slumped forward on the couch. Darkness swallowed her, and she slipped into that cruel, unescapable world again. This dream was different. She was standing in the middle of a train station, empty and silent except for the flicker of faulty fluorescent lights above. The walls dripped with condensation, the air heavy with the smell of rust and mold. She could hear something soft, like the sound of a person sobbing, echoing through the tunnel. Slowly she turned. At the far end of the platform, half hidden in the shadows, stood a woman. Her face was pale and blurred, like a photograph smeared by water. But there was something familiar in the shape of her figure, the way she clutched her purse. It was her neighbor, the woman from down the hall. "No," she whispered, backing away. "Not her. Please, not her." But the dream didn't care. The woman staggered forward, her steps uneven, as though her body didn't belong to her. Her neck bent at an impossible angle with each movement, the bones cracking loudly in the silence. She stopped in front of the tracks and began to cry harder, her shoulders shaking. The girl screamed at her. Don't step forward. Please." The woman didn't respond. Instead, she tilted her head up, and for the first time, her face became clear, skin torn around the mouth, blood trickling down her chin, eyes wide and lifeless. Then, slowly, she raised one trembling hand and pointed directly at the dreamer. "You did this." The screech of a train roared through the tunnel, lights blinding. Before she could move, the neighbor stepped onto the tracks. The sound of impact reverberated in her skull like a thunderclap. She woke up screaming, clutching her chest. Her phone buzzed on the table. Hands shaking, she reached for it. News alert. Woman struck and killed by train late last night. The article showed the photo of her neighbor, the same blurred face she had seen in the dream. The phone slipped from her hand. It was no longer just coincidence, not chance. Every dream was a death sentence. And the next one would come soon. She swore she wouldn't close her eyes again. Not after her neighbor. Not after watching death spill from her dreams into the waking world. Her apartment became a fortress against sleep. The curtains stayed wide open so the streetlights could burn her eyes awake. Every room buzzed with electronics, TV, radio, even her old laptop, anything to keep silence from settling in. Silence was too close to dreaming. But exhaustion is a cruel predator. By the 4th night, without real sleep, her body began betraying her. Her vision doubled, colors bled together, and every shadow seemed to twitch when she wasn't looking. She rubbed her face, raw, trying to stay awake. And then she started seeing them. It began with her reflection in the bathroom mirror. She leaned over the sink, splashing cold water across her face. But when she looked up, the reflection didn't copy her. It stood perfectly still, its head tilted slightly, eyes wide and bloodshot. She froze. Her reflection smiled. Behind the reflection, shapes began to appear, dark, blurred outlines of people standing shoulder to shoulder, filling the mirror with a crowd that wasn't in the bathroom with her. Their mouths opened as one, whispering. She slapped the light switch, plunging the room into darkness. When she flicked it back on, nothing. Just her, pale and trembling. But it didn't stop. Everywhere she looked, the dead began to bleed into reality. On the subway, she swore she saw the girl from her first dream, the one who drowned, sitting across from her, dripping water onto the seat. At the grocery store, a broken-neck silhouette limped between the aisles, watching her. No one else reacted. They were only for her. Sleep wasn't the only place her curse lived anymore. It had clawed its way into the daylight, peeling reality apart thread by thread. She stumbled home, heart pounding, every corner of her apartment alive with eyes. The whispers never left her ears. She pressed her palms over them until they bled, but still she could hear. You can't run. You can't hide. You're next. She curled into herself on the floor, shaking violently. For the first time, she wondered if dying in a dream might be easier than living in this waking nightmare. And worst of all, she could feel it building inside her again. That heavy, familiar weight. Sleep was coming. And she knew, this time, it wouldn't just claim someone else. It would come for her. For days, she fought. She drowned herself in coffee until her stomach turned acid. She wrapped bands of ice around her wrists, forcing her body to shiver awake. She even lit candles in every corner of the apartment, hoping that the glow and heat would keep her conscious. But sleep doesn't ask for permission. It takes. Her body collapsed one night while she was sitting upright against the couch. The mug slipped from her fingers, shattering on the floor. The world grew heavy and dark, and before she could stop it, she slid into the place she feared most. The dream was waiting for her. She woke in a vast moonlit field, the ground damp and cold beneath her bare feet. The silence was suffocating. No crickets, no wind, just stillness. And then she noticed the outlines, dozens of figures standing in the distance, frozen, as though carved from shadow. Their heads turned toward her in unison. She stumbled backward, but the field shifted under her feet. No matter how fast she moved, she couldn't put distance between herself and the figures. They began to advance, slow and deliberate, their faces pale and blurred, eyes wide and unblinking. She screamed, but her voice dissolved in the air like smoke. The figures closed in, whispering fragments of words she couldn't make out. But one stood closer than the rest, a tall woman with hair hanging like wet ropes across her face. Her mouth hung open, stretching wider and wider until it was nothing but a black void. The dream twisted. She was no longer in the field, but inside her apartment, a dream version of it. The shadows of the figures filled every doorway, every corner. The broken-neck man leaned against the wall where her mirror should have been. The drowned girl lay across her bed, dripping a dark liquid that spread across the sheets. All of them watching her. And then she realized what was different this time. She wasn't just witnessing the deaths of others. She felt something wrapping around her own body, something tightening around her throat, pressing into her chest. Her lungs burned as though invisible hands were crushing them. She clawed at her skin, desperate for air, but her dream self only convulsed silently. The shadows closed in, whispering louder, voices overlapping until they became deafening. It's your turn. It's your turn. It's your turn. Her body jolted awake, except she didn't move. Her eyes opened to her real apartment, the candles still burning low, but she couldn't lift her arms, couldn't scream. Her body was paralyzed. And in the corner, by the window, stood the drowned girl. Not a dream anymore. Her eyes dripped black. She waved. The morning after she saw the drowned girl in her waking apartment, everything changed. At first, she tried to convince herself it had been sleep paralysis, just another cruel trick of exhaustion. But the news reports didn't lie. The headlines screamed. 2 teens found dead in abandoned lot. Witnesses say they saw a woman there first. Man collapses on live stream. Last words mention a dream. Each detail sliced through her. They weren't just dying in her dreams anymore. The curse was leaking, stretching its claws outward. The people she had brushed against on the street, strangers who had passed her in the cafe, even the delivery man who had looked her in the eyes, all of them were starting to dream of her. And then die. The numbers grew quickly. 2 deaths turned to 4. 4 became 12. By the end of the week, a small town 20 miles away was in chaos. An entire family was found dead in their home, their faces twisted into expressions of terror, their fingernails bloodied as if they tried to claw themselves awake. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages she didn't understand. "Why did you come to me? You're in my dreams. Please stop." She deleted them, but more came. Hundreds. Names she didn't know. Faces she'd never seen. And then, one night, her screen lit up with a message from her best friend. The one person she had avoided, terrified to hurt. "Why were you in my room last night?" Her stomach dropped. She hadn't gone near her. She hadn't even called her in weeks. But when she rushed to her friend's apartment, pounding on the door until her knuckles split, she found police tape across it. The medics carried out a stretcher, a sheet pulled over the still shape of someone she loved. She staggered back, unable to breathe. This wasn't just her curse anymore. It was a contagion. Every time she closed her eyes, every time she thought about someone she cared for, the darkness spread. The shadows found them, hunted them, and snuffed them out. And the worst part? She began to see them even when she was awake. At the bus stop, commuters sat with blackened eyes, their lips moving in whispers only she could hear. On the train, the reflection in the window didn't match the man seated beside her. It blinked when he didn't. The city itself seemed infected, lights flickering, buildings humming with the same whisper that had haunted her dreams. "It's your turn. It's your turn. It's your turn." She realized the horrifying truth. It wasn't that her dreams were killing people. It was that she had become a bridge, a door between this world and something hungering on the other side. And now the door was wide open. She hadn't slept for 5 days. Her eyes were bloodshot, her skin pale and trembling from the weight of exhaustion. Every attempt at closing her eyes, just for a second, had nearly dragged her back into the abyss where shadows waited to devour someone else. But she couldn't hold out forever. Her body gave in on the 6th night. When she finally collapsed, it wasn't into ordinary sleep. The dream swallowed her instantly, pulling her into a vast, endless field of darkness. No ground, no sky, only a horizon of faces. Thousands of them. All the people who had died. The drowned girl. The teens. The family. Her best friend. Their faces floated in the black void, their eyes glowing faintly like dying embers, fixed on her with the weight of accusation. She staggered, screaming apologies, clawing at the void, begging for it to stop. But their voices rose together into a whisper, so loud it shook the very air. You opened the door. Behind them, something stirred. It was not a person, not even a thing. It was a hunger itself, the being that had used her as its vessel. A shifting mass of shadow, thousands of unblinking eyes opening across its surface, all staring directly into her soul. It stepped forward, and the faces of the dead were dragged into it, consumed like ash in the wind. And then it spoke, not in sound, but in the weight of inevitability pressing against her skull. You were never the curse. You were the key. Her body fell limp. The next morning, the entire city woke to silence. Not a bird, not a car horn, not a voice. Every home, every street, every building was filled with bodies, eyes open, mouths frozen in screams, as though they had all slipped into the same dream and never returned. And there, in the center of the city, she stood motionless, eyes black as obsidian, her lips curled into a faint smile. She wasn't asleep anymore. She wasn't awake either. She had become the dream itself, and no one woke up again